Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to Thursdays with Wayne and Steve with the Talking Pools podcast group. Hope everybody has had a good week. I know I have, and I'm pretty sure Steve has too because of where he's located right now. But it's been an interesting week, very all over the place, an interesting week, but not going to touch that because that's politics. I'm not going to go there. But I thought what we do today is something that's a little bit of a tag on to a podcast we did a couple weeks ago about pool inspections, because we both feel very strong about the need for a good pool inspection and things to look for. So I thought we'd create our top 10 list of things to look for in a pool inspection by the inspector themselves. And this can be used actually by anybody. Make sure you're doing everything right. You don't get shut down by your local health department. You don't get the proverbial finger wag. And Steve, if it's okay to put you on the spot, I'm going to start off with you because you have more experience with pool inspections than me. But I wanted to chime in on a couple aspects. But take it away, sir. See what we can come up with.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to, hello everybody, and I just wanted to build on a little bit of what we were talking about a few weeks ago, because we did get a lot of positive feedback from that show. Had a lot of people were like, hey, listen to the show, would love to get some more of that, because we did, not that we ran out of time, but, our shows kind of pull us in a bunch of different directions. So we kind of thought, I guess it was a good idea to come back and, touch on this. And I thought that was a great idea. Not only for just the commercial inspections, and a commercial inspection is so important because you are the one that's coming and, for all intents and purposes, acting like the health department, right? So I kind of tell them that, hey, I'm going to come out and take a look at your pool, and I'm actually going to be stricter than the health department when I come out, because I'm going to be, it just says that I disconnected for a second. So we might have to fix that one. So, but anyway, like I said, when you come out to a commercial inspection, you're acting more strict than the health department would be in that sense, right? Because it's just really important for you to, number one, understand what's going on. Number two, give a clear, concise, expert, factual opinion on what's actually going on. And there's a lot of things with the pool inspections where there's so many safety aspects of it that people don't think of, in a sense of, the number one most important things that you're going to be looking for at a pool inspection are going to be that when you go to the equipment pad, that the equipment is all bonded and grounded properly. And that's going to be the first thing, right?
Right.
The second thing that you're going to be looking at is at the pool itself are the main drain covers, VGB certified? Are they expired? Is a big one, right? And do they have the documentation for the VGB drains? And I kid you not, the first question that I ask all of my classes in CPO is the first thing that you need to write down is when you go back to your facility, you have to ask them, are we compliant with the VGB laws? And when I tell you that no one has any idea about, even the law itself, so I go in a little bit with the law and I explain that since 2008, all of the commercial pools had to change out their main drains. And then those main drains have expiration dates, right? So you have to wind up changing those out as well too over time. So even if you changed your drain covers in 2008 when you were supposed to, it's 2024. The longest certification I believe that they give at this time is 10 years. I think we're up to 10 years now So there's started out as like
a couple years, didn't
it was 3, and then it was 5, and then it was 7, and then like some of the bigger ones have 10 years on them.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to be changed out from that. And it's not from the date of manufacture. It's not from the date of sale. It's actually from the date of installation. And the reason that it's from the date of installation is because UV degradation from the sun is what they're going, because they have these three testing companies, 2 of which wound up being that their tests weren't proper, I guess they could say, after a few years. So they had to kind of go back to the drawing board, and some of these main drain covers became not invalid, but everybody kind of wanted to make sure that they were using the right stuff. So you have to make sure that, number one, that VGB cover is secure, that it is not expired, and that you have 2 of them, right? And if there's anybody out there who still has a single main drain and you guys are a commercial pool, you guys are cheap. Okay, like you're telling me you haven't renovated the pool since 2008, Wayne? You know what I mean? Like, and there are, like, I get it. Like sometimes you get into a new job or something like that, and there's a single main drain. If you have a single main drain, you have to have a backup system. There's only 5 backup systems that you're allowed to have. The first 2 need to be done when the pool is built, right? So the limiting vent system and the gravity drainage system. Right. Then you could do drain disablement. So you could totally cut the drain out, or you could make it into a return instead of a suction outlet. And then the last 2 are the automated pump shutoff switches, which are like the Stangle switches. And then they have the SVRSs, which are the safety vacuum release systems, right? So that's like the vac alert and the vacless and a few of those. And basically what it does is if someone gets entrapped on that single main drain, it sucks in air and it allows that person to get disentrapped. But again, basically what they said is as soon as you renovate these pools, you have to change that single main drain into dual main drains. That also, guys, for you residential business owners and you residential renovators, you also have to take your single main drain residential pools, when you renovate it and give it a new surface, you have to change it to dual main drains that are hydraulically balanced and more than 3 feet apart center to center. It's just what it has to be. So those are, those are the 2 main things that I'm going to look at, where if the health department came in and they found out that you were not in compliance with these, they would shut you down immediately. So those are the, and, so the third most important thing I would say that ties into the safety aspect of this is if the light is not working, the pool shouldn't be open. And you could argue this all day long that, hey, but it does not matter if the light is not working properly. There could be, we don't know if there's a stray current in the water, so you could jump in the water and get electrocuted, so those are the big things that I'm looking for first in the safety aspect of it. And then there's other stuff that's real important that is expensive, right? So I always tell everybody when I do an inspection, I always come to the pool and I look at the pool itself as one kind of entity, right? Like I look at the equipment pad as its own thing, and then I kind of look at the pool as its own thing as well, right? So I look at the surface, I look at the tile, and if there's cracks in the tile and stuff, there could be something more, just something worse happening. It could be, a cracked bond beam. It could be, something that's structurally not sound.
And that's different than standard settling, I guess.
Totally different, yeah. And the 2 things that I will never say, and you should never say at an inspection, is you should never say that this pool is leaking, and you should never say that this pool is not structurally sound. Because unless you're a leak detection expert or unless you're a soils guy and an engineer, you don't have the qualifications and credentials to say to these people, hey, this is what's going on, even if you think it. So people always ask, they say, hey, can you do leak detection with the pool inspection? Absolutely not. My leak detection guy costs, upwards of $500 to $1,000 per time to do a leak detection. That's the cost of an inspection. So no, I'm not doing double work for, one single paycheck. So that's a totally separate job. So I always tell everybody when I come out to the pool, if you need to get the pool resurfaced and you need to get the tile redone and you need to get the coping redone and the expansion joint, that it's somewhere in the range of over $20,000 to $30,000 at least. And then people ask about the deck. They're like, hey, what about the deck and the lines and underneath the ground? And if you're going to put new lines in the deck and you're going to get a new deck, it would double that estimate. So now you're easily in your backyard, you're easily looking at a $50,000, $60,000, sometimes $70,000 renovation for something that, people don't understand that. So they don't really have realistic expectations in that aspect, where they're thinking that they're coming in and you're going to give them a quote for $10,000, $15,000, maybe $20,000, and you're giving them the low end quote that looks something like $30,000, and it's just not matching up, right? So,
and here's a subtopic to what you're talking about too, is that you got to plan for renovations, and if you don't have in your budget for a renovation, and I'm going to be really generic on this, then you're screwed. You can't afford that. What do you do when you come up and are handed a quote for $50,000 to fix everything to make it right again? You don't got the money. Too bad.
Yeah.
Sorry, kind of deal. So you got to be careful of your budget here, and you got to plan for these things.
No, exactly. I think 4 and 5, Wayne, would be sticking with safety. I'm going to look at and this is the first thing that you're going to do when you come in. You're going to look at the gate and make sure that the gate, and we talked about this sparsely during the last episode, but you always want the gate to close shut. You never want it to, open inwards. So if a child does push on the gate, they're closing it, they're making it go closed. They're not opening up the gate in a sense, right? In that aspect. That's the first thing with the gate. But then also, like I said, the lights before.
Well, you've got the height of the gate too, and any kind of fencing, minimum 4 feet. And I always tell them in my CPO classes, think 4 by 4 by 4, minimum 4 feet tall or 4 to 8 inches. A minimum of 4 inches above the actual ground. The gap shouldn't be any greater than 4 inches because the kid can slip underneath, a real skinny kid.
Right.
And then if it's rails, as opposed to flat fencing, if it's rails, you can't have the rails any more than 4 inches apart because a really small kid could squeeze him or herself through there. So 4 by 4 by 4 is what I tell people.
Right, exactly. And sticking with that, with the safety, handrails and ladders in the pool for commercial pools are going to be very important, just in a sense of you're making sure that you're going around and you're physically touching all of them and making sure that they are not loose or uneven, or they don't have the little couplings on them on the ladders on the, that go onto the wall, because now someone slips and falls or hurts themselves, and we find out that one of the steps on the ladders was broken and it was known about beforehand. I mean, that's going to be easily open up yourself to a lawsuit. And then another thing is, you have to, even if it's very basic, you have to understand what settling is and underground water runoff underneath the deck. Right. So 1 gallon of water weighs 8.33 pounds. So if you have a 40,000 gallon pool, you're going to have a lot of weight holding that pool into the ground. Right. So the weight of that water is holding that shell really tight into the ground. But underneath the deck, all they're really doing most of the time is they're backpacking soil, and they're tamping it down really, really tight. And then they're putting, the decking over it. So over time, obviously, we're on Earth, it's spinning, there's water, there's underground water that's moving. So now over the years, there's nothing really taking away from that water running underneath the decking. And it takes part of that soil out. The soil becomes wet. It starts to move. It starts to slide a little bit. And I always explain it like, if I'm standing on the deck of the pool and I'm not evenly looking across the way, sometimes I feel like the deck is kind of on like a bit of an angle, right? So it's like you're almost like looking up like into the sky, right? And I always tell people, if you're looking up into the sky, it's kind of gets really weird, in that aspect. And you probably have some settling underneath your deck. Now, you can't just fix that by like just pulling up the piece of deck. You have to actually, most of the time, unless you have small slabs, you would have to take out the whole deck and you would have to actually redo the whole thing. Right. So again, once you're getting into that, I'm not saying it's going to be $100,000, but it's getting up there. I've never had someone that was like, oh yeah, let's just redo the backyard. It always starts out like that. And they say, hey, let's redo the backyard. And then once they find out the cost of how much that actually really costs, then they're not super interested anymore. Or they wind up doing, and I always tell people, I say, like, what kind of a renovation are you looking for? Because there's the renovation where it's like a facelift, but like they're not really going inside and doing anything. They're just kind of putting like
making
lipstick
it look
on.
Pretty.
Yeah, putting lipstick on a pig, right? So there's no problem with just resurfacing the pool, but then the client is like, oh, well, is this staining that you talked about going to go away? And it's like, no, we haven't changed the copper plumbing that's in the ground, that are from 40, 50 years ago. Like, of course, there's still going to be copper staining in the pool because we're still using copper plumbing lines. Right. I have one of my clients right now, and he wants to redo the pool, but I don't want him to redo the pool because it's a 35,000 gallon pool, and he's got these 2 little 1/2-inch return outlets, and both of them are like in the shallow end of the pool.
Oh, wow.
So we're always having problems with algae, no matter how much we run his filter, no matter, I think last month, Wayne, no, I'm not even joking around. I think we put in 25 pounds of Cal Hypo into his pool last month. Just because you have a 30,000 gallon pool, you have algae, so you need to put it up to 30. So we're not adding 3 pounds of cal hypo anymore. We're adding 9 pounds at a clip. So 9 pounds go into this pool right away. And again, I usually use liquid chlorine most of the time, but in a situation like this, pound for pound, cal hypo is actually now, I think, a little bit cheaper than liquid chlorine is, which is crazy to say because liquid was always by far way cheaper, right? But now, because of the cost of raw materials, I feel like every 4 months, Haas is sending out a notice and they're like, guess what, guys? Price increase.
The mobile WaterLink Spin Touch allows pool and spa professionals the ability to test water in the field. A patented WaterLink Spin reagent disc is used with the innovative photometer to measure 10 different tests in just 60 seconds. That's right, just 60 seconds, and you'll have results displayed simultaneously on the photometer's touchscreen. That's not all. You also have the ability to send the data through Bluetooth into a smartphone or a tablet device. The photometer can measure free chlorine, bromine, total chlorine, combined chlorine, pH, alkalinity, hardness, cyanuric acid, copper, iron, phosphate, borate, biguanide shock, and salt. The water analysis can be proactive since they are able to measure all of these important tests and recommend correct procedures to fix their water chemistry issues when using our WaterLink Solutions Pro software program. It allows pool and spa analysts the best way to achieve precise results. So simple, anyone can use it. This is the most advanced system for precise use of wet chemistry methods ever produced. Pool and spa analysts can achieve precision without time-consuming tests or cleanup procedures. This groundbreaking analysis system is so simple, no vials to fill, no prep time, no guessing. To learn more about this innovative lab, visit www.waterlinkspintouch.com. Again, www.waterlinkspintouch.com.
Guess what, guys? Price increase. So it's really, you try and do the right thing. But like I said, how much can I really add to this guy's pool in a month, without losing money? So that's what we've been talking about with him. And, he wants to do like pavers. And I don't work with anybody who does pavers. And I know there are people out there that do a really great job with pavers, but like they're hard. They're hard to do. And after a while, it looks kind of funky and whatnot. So I'm trying, we're going back and forth on what he actually wants to do. All right, but back to the inspections. I think that's some of the main safety stuff that I had went over. Obviously, in a commercial pool, there's other things that they need to have. So you need to have the backboard, you need to have the shepherd's hook. The big thing with the shepherd's hook is that you can't have any aftermarket parts on it, and it can't be on a regular telescoping pole. I can't tell you how many places that I go to, and it's just on the old pole that used to be the vacuum head pole, and like you can't use that pole. It can't be an extendable pole. It needs to be a fixed length pole, and the actual shepherd's hook itself needs to have like nuts and bolts on them, like almost so you can't get it out.
You can't extend it, yeah.
And then you have to have the ring buoys and stuff. So again, the big thing with the commercial pools is always the safety equipment. Sticking with safety, right? PPE. So that's going to be a number one. I think we're on 6 or 7 now number if we're keeping our numbers, right? So really, really important that obviously I just had one of my clients and they called me and their safety department called. And it's a hotel/casino in the area. And basically one of their employees went to go move the chlorine and he got chlorine in his eye. And they called me and they were like, hey, we don't want you guys storing this stuff on our property anymore. And I was like, okay, I agree with you that I don't want to store it there. But I was like, we already have automated systems. So you already have a 50-gallon carbuoy of, muriatic acid. You have a 15-gallon carbuoy of chlorine. You're already storing all of this stuff. I was like, instead of, having problems with storing it, I was like, how about we use proper PPE? How about we use masks and gloves? And that's something that I'm either going to provide to my clients or I'm going to tell them what to buy. I don't care about making money on that stuff at all. It does not matter to me. It's just you have to have the right PPE there. So you need to make sure that, if you're not there and something happens, that they would be able to do what they need to do and not have any safety issues with that.
And that even comes down to simple things like handling tablets. God forbid you put them in a skimmer. But, if a plop went in a skimmer or floater, or if you're filling up an erosion feeder, wear gloves. I mean, this is common sense stuff here. Don't let it touch your skin, because if you don't wash that off, I mean, you got issues. I mean, any kind of chlorine is going to start eating away at the skin on your fingers and cause damage and things like that. I mean, it's common sense,
It is. I actually, one time I was wearing glasses and I was pouring liquid chlorine into the pool, and it like splashed and it like hit my like head up here. And I didn't realize it, like I thought it was on my glasses. So I took my glasses off, I washed them in the pool and then put them back on. And like later on in the day, I was like getting all itchy up here on my head and stuff. And I just kept itching it, right? And then like at the end of the day, I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh man, I actually took my skin right off. I had like just a patch of skin missing. And that's just from regular 12% liquid chlorine. It wasn't even that crazy of like a splash or anything. And it was very normal of a thing to happen. And I couldn't believe that it had reacted like that. I always keep a double lined. I don't even use the single lined gloves anymore. I use double lined gloves now. They sell ones that are like dual. So they're, basically if it rips a little bit, you still have a second piece of glove on there. But yeah, I always wear gloves and I always try and wear eye protection. And then a big thing is like a lot of these people don't know when you mix chlorine and muriatic acid that it makes mustard gas. Right? So it's kind of like
dangerous.
Right. So I walked into a pump room last week and I said to them, I was like, hey, like, why are the chlorine and acid tanks right next to each other? I was like, that's unacceptable. We can't have that. And they were like, oh, because the tubing isn't long enough to go and have it move on its own side. And I'm like, we'll get you more tubing. Like, this is not a big deal. Like, we will absolutely get you more tubing. So sometimes it's just simple stuff like that, where it's like, oh, the length of the hose isn't long enough. So that's why they're literally sitting next to each other. But you can't have any chemicals stored near each other. And in the chemical room, you need to make sure that obviously that there's good ventilation. And this isn't something maybe you wouldn't be able to do at the inspection, but I've had it happen where my commercial clients call me and they're like, hey, Steve, we took the class. We loved it. You totally showed us, we always have combined chlorine. We didn't even know this. And now we've really been on top of it. And we've really been trying to get rid of the combined chlorine. So every night, we shock the pool, we breakpoint superchlorinate the pool. We even put in extra. And the next morning, sure enough, we come back in and what happens? The combined chlorine is right back. So, they don't understand that instead of that going and gassing off into what would be the atmosphere, it just sits on the ceiling. And because that HVAC system doesn't have enough air exchanges per hour, right? What winds up happening is it just reabsorbs back into the pool. Right. So now you have that combined chlorine again. So I just got a quote for one of my commercial clients, and they're doing a brand new HVAC system. Easy 100K. Easy. He got 4 different quotes. All of them were over 100K. One of them was like
how many
25,000, 30.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Very, very small pool, but it's indoor. The whole thing is indoor. And the HVAC system was just really shitty. You know what I mean? It was old and really bad, so it wasn't really that great. So that's what they wound up doing. But I was like, why is this one quote $20,000 less than the other? And it was because of like the water heater, like the one had like a water heater in it, like a $20,000 water heater. So, once you get into that stuff, it gets kind of crazy, and with chemicals and fumes and all that stuff, and most people don't even know, Wayne. It's like when you walk into that room with the staunch chlorine smell, a lot of people think it's because there's too much chlorine in the pool, right? And it's not because there's too much chlorine in the pool. Right. It's because there's too many chloramines in the water. And the chloramines are coming from sweat and pee, and when people go in the pool and they're putting off stuff into their body, so the more people you have in your pool, obviously the more combined chlorine you got to test for. Right. My residential pools. Yeah, exactly. My residential pools, I'm not usually even testing for the combined chlorine at all. Where with my commercial pools, we're testing for the combined chlorine every single time we're there. Yeah. Because we have some of these pools where there's 50, 100, 200 people in these pools a day. So it's really it's really easy to get behind the 8 ball is really what it comes down to. All right, I'm looking over here because I have a sheet that I use that I basically go off of. I don't use it so much anymore, but like it kind of keeps you in line for the inspections. So like I said, the most important stuff, I think we kind of covered some of the most important stuff.
I think we did. Yeah, a couple things I want to add to it.
Sure.
I guess from my perspective is that on a commercial level, you're depending upon your state or your county or whatever your jurisdiction is, you're required to have some kind of a testing system. Okay, and by system I mean it could be a kit, could be something online, could be a combination, could be a lot of different things.
Just not OTO, baby. Just not OTO.
Yeah. Oh, please, no. Yeah, exactly. And what these health departments will say, okay, you have to use X kind of they won't name a brand name of a test kit because they're not allowed to, because that shows preference over one company or not. So they got to be as intentionally generic as they possibly can. So they'll say, the test kit has to be a DPD test kit or an FAS DPD test kit, the drop test. You have to be able to test pH. And that's pretty much where it stops. The good health departments will say, okay, also do an alkalinity test. They might even add a hardness test. Some, not all, and very few will say, okay, got to do water balance once a week or once a month or something like that. And you don't see that too often. I'd love to be able to see that in every code. But so even if you're talking the minimum sanitizer and pH test, okay? We all know OTO, forget it. No, don't touch it, throw it away kind of deal, because it doesn't really tell you much of anything other than whether you have chlorine or not. Okay, the DPD test, an OTO, by the way, remember everybody's yellow. DPD is pink-ish, variations of pink, and that tells you how much active chlorine, free chlorine that's in the water doing the job it's supposed to do. Okay. And it will also, if you have an FAS DPD test kit, it will give you an accurate reading on what your combined chlorine is, which is what you were talking about, Steve. It's critically important to know that combined chlorine number, because that leads into appropriate amounts to achieve breakpoint chlorination, to get rid of it. And I always tell people, I know it sounds really weird and doesn't make much sense, but you're adding chlorine to get rid of chlorine. That's what you're doing, essentially. Okay. And so you have to be able to test that. And obviously, the pH of the water is critical for a lot of things, not only bather comfort, but equipment usage. You obviously don't want water that's terribly acidic. It doesn't feel good, number one. But number two, it's going to do a number on your equipment. And if you leave it alone and ignore it, it's really going to do a very costly number on your equipment. That, again, tens and thousands of dollars in repairs that you didn't budget for or expect to have to pay for. And the other thing is that I don't believe there's a health department in the country. I could be wrong on this. I remember hearing something about a county in Texas, but I could be wrong. It said on a commercial property, you should never, never, never use a test strip to put down official recordings of test results, because test strips are too wide as far as the standards are on the little pads. And you're not going to get a number. It's called a qualitative test versus quantitative. Quantitative gives you a number. Qualitative gives you it's about this area. You have to use a test kit that you're going to get a number from. And I would say every reliable test kit manufacturer that's out there, and you're talking about companies like Lamont and Taylor and a couple other ones, are going to provide that quantitative test for you. Okay. Now, it's okay to use a test strip maybe in between official, recordings of values, to see if you're going in the right direction. And that's okay. But you cannot use them for official recordings because of the fact it doesn't give you a number. And when tied into all of this, okay, having the right kind of testing system, make sure it's up to date and it's fresh and you're using good liquid reagents or whatever. Nothing's been expired. Oh, God, the stories. Going into pools like you, Steve, and looking at their test kit, and especially if it was a kit from a company that I used to work for, and I can tell immediately by the label on the test kit itself, the actual case, how old that kit is. And then whether they reuse the case or not really doesn't matter. It's like the case is maybe from 30 years ago. It's like, oh God, please no. And then you look at the labels and it's like, oh God, yeah, it's like 20 years old or something like that. Yeah. Well, we don't do that test very often. Yes, I can tell that you don't do that test very often.
Wayne, I do a lot of inspections now, and for the commercial inspections, if it's going to be my client, I'll do a full panel test, but I actually got myself out of doing the whole full panel test because it's not my pool. It's not really my business.
Mhm.
And what I found out is, the things that I care about on the day-to-day basis for my pools is the chlorine, the pH, and the alkalinity, right?
Right.
But when I go to inspection, I actually stopped testing for those three because what I realized and what I found out is like maybe the pool guy comes tomorrow and there's no chlorine in the pool because he hasn't been here for a week.
Right.
Maybe he showed up yesterday and he blasted the pool with chlorine because it had a little bit of algae. So now it's going to be at 15 or 20 or whatever, you know? I don't know what happened. I'm just there for the time that I'm there for the inspection, right? And we're assuming like, hey, this is someone that I'm not getting any more business from, anything like that. I'm only going to do the calcium hardness, the total dissolved solids, and the cyanuric acid. And I'm going to do those three because those three take a really long time to build up. But the only thing that brings them down is fresh water. So that's actually going to tell me, does this pool have a good long-term health? And I mean that in a sense of like, if you fill up a hot tub and there's 100 people using this 1,500 gallon hot tub, like that water is only going to be good for one night. It's going to be used up in one night because all of the minerals and all the crap that's going in the water, you're going to have to drain it tomorrow. Or you could have a backyard pool where there's a family of 5 that use it maybe twice a year. The kids are in college. They're empty nesters now, so they don't really have anybody using their pool. That water can stay in there for years and years and years. So I want you guys to really understand out there listening that like, even though this pool got filled up last year, like it might be time to change your water. Like people don't think of it like that. And you said before, I'm actually on vacation here in Cabarete, which is in Dominican Republic. And I'm with a bunch of my friends and they were like, why don't you guys come out to the pool with us? And we were like, we're not pool people, and we started explaining to them. I was like,
we know too much.
When everybody goes into the pool, everybody poops in the pool a little bit on a microscopic level. And one of them was like, I'm sorry, can you explain that a little bit better? So they're like, I'm not really understanding. And I'm like, okay, well, all of your muscles relax. I'm like, your fingers, they get all like pruny and stuff. I'm like, you stay in the water for a long time. I'm like, everything gets a little pruny, So I was like, everybody on a microscopic level is having fecal matter release into the water, right? So it's just stuff that unless you're exposed to it, you're not really thinking about it. But again, like you guys that own pool companies, if you are not, and we only do a full panel test for our residential clients once a month. Like we're not even, when we come, we're testing the chlorine, the pH, and the alkalinity. The big thing for me though is the first of the month when we test for the salt and the phosphates and the, all that stuff. If something is wrong and you need to add something, don't let it be 3 weeks again before you test or 4 weeks again before you test. Like if the cyanuric acid was at 20 and you want to bring it up to 40 or 50 and you put in 4 or 5 pounds, like, the next week when you come back, test the cyanuric acid again and see where it went to. You know what I've also found out? I don't know who the manufacturers of these chemicals are, but I know every time I buy cyanuric acid and it comes in a blue bucket, works fine. Every time I buy cyanuric acid and it comes in a red bucket, which is like almost half the price, I put it in and I feel like it's just dropping out of nowhere. Like it's not adding cyanuric acid to the pool at all. And I actually was just on the Facebook forums and stuff the other day and reading it, and everybody was like, yeah, the red can sucks, and I was like, I don't understand how this distributor could be selling a red can and a blue can, and the blue can works and the red can don't.
Distributor doesn't care. Distributor doesn't care. Just out there to make money.
Of course, but that's an episode in itself, right? But like I said, the big thing with that is, I always make sure that I'm doing the 3 tests. And for my commercial pools, I'm doing once a week full panel tests, right? Because there's just so much going on and so many different variables that they have going on that you can't wait once a month to do for your commercial pools. With your residential pools, there's not a lot going on. Again, in the summertime, you have to keep a better handle on it. Here in California, our pools are open all year long. So in January and February, when the water is 58 degrees and nobody's using the water, like my alkalinity will stay at 80 for 3 months straight. And you'll never have to put in any baking soda to bring it up. But like that first, March, April, May happens and my guy tests it and it's at, 50 and he goes to bring it up to 80. And then he comes back the next week and it's at 60. And he's like, what's going on? Like, why isn't it going up to where it should be? And I'm like, because you're behind the 8 ball and it's actually going down more than what you're putting in. So it's actually still going down. you know? So I had to have like an education session with them on that. I was like, please, in the summertime, like we're not bringing it up to 80, we're bringing it up, the alkalinity up to 100, you know, which is right in the middle of the range between 80 and 120.
So we've talked a lot today about a lot of different things, but I'd like to hear from the people who listen to us. You know, what do you do anything different? What's your top 10 list of things to take a look at when you're doing an inspection? Do they pretty much match what we've talked about? Do you add something for your particular? We'd love to hear from you, and not only on that topic, but really any topic. If you have any comments or questions or whatnot, send us an email, talkingpools@gmail.com, and it will come into everybody who broadcasts for Talking Pools, and we'll disseminate it out to whomever can answer the question better. If we use your question or your comment on air, we'll send you a little present as a thank you. And if not, we appreciate your attendance and look forward to talking to you next week. So for Steve and myself, everybody have a wonderful week. Steve, have fun in the DR.
Thanks, buddy.
Don't get bitten by a shark or anything, but
oh my God, don't say that.
and we'll see you all next Thursday.
Wayne,
take care, guys.
One last point. We want to hear, you know, this show is, we're conventional here with this, but there are a lot of stuff that I've learned over the years that are like so important to me. Like I learned that now when I go to a pool inspection, I bring a sand wedge with me. That's gonna show me, because I used to bring a wrench and I used to have to go on my hands and knees and run it across the, you know, to see if the coping stones were hollow. But someone taught me, bring a golf club with you. You know, and like now with my walking stick and my test kit, the third thing that I'm bringing with me is a golf club to the inspection so I can see if any of the tile or any of the coping stone is hollow. It's very non-invasive. You just run it across the, you know, the top of it and boom, you're done. But like somebody showed me that 20 years ago and it was one of those things where like the light bulb just went off in my head and I was like, that's the greatest thing ever.
Just use an iron that you don't use too often on the course.
I haven't golfed in forever. So, all right, buddy. Thanks for the great show today.
We'll talk to you later, guys. Thank you.